All right, let's try this again. This is the State of the Fan Address, episode 74, because it's a happy Devil's Wednesday, and I got a special birthday message for the wonderful Arlette. I just want to say happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Come on, Nick. Just be a little, celebrate with me. Happy birthday, dear Arlette. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, Arlette, a good friend of the podcast, State of the Fan Address, the Let's Go Devils
Sam,
podcast, all powered by the Primetime Radio Network. What's up?
My present to Arlette was to not sing. There's no reason why. You can ask my wife. I am tone deaf. When I go to karaoke, I sing "I'm Too Sexy" by Right Said Fred because I don't have to change the dictation or tone of my voice. Yeah, I listen, if you want me to sing "I'm Too Sexy" to Arlette, maybe another time, but for her birthday, I'm not going to sing anything that has any kind of intervals or tone or dictation of any kind.
You know, it's really funny. Actually, I wished her a happy birthday over a text message, and she's like, no, it's actually tomorrow, but I've been celebrating since Sunday, so I guess it's Arlette's birthday week. And nice. I said, oh, LOL, I'll sing to you on our podcast tonight. And she writes, this I have got, with caps, got to hear, with a smiley face. And then I just LOL'd her back. We want to welcome everybody watching live on Facebook Live, Twitter Periscope, YouTube Live, Twitch. Everyone's like, hey, this is probably a teaser because they know our intro. And really, what we were doing was we were testing out the Let's Go Devils podcast emergency broadcast system. So in case there is a breaking news and we need to discuss it behind the scenes and go live, it was just a test. It wasn't really a teaser. We like to test things. So when we are back in playoff form next season, hopefully we'll make the playoffs. But when we're back into our form next season, that we've got all these gadgets and gadgets and we would just want to test them. But right now, I think everyone's confused probably where to watch us. And right now, there's a second link on Twitter. Anyway, I will start deleting links right now, Nick. But we have a heck of a podcast tonight. You want to introduce or just kind of let the listeners know? I mean, we titled it New Jersey Devils Podcasts because we tried to get some podcasters on here. We have in the past, but this is a fellow podcaster of ours.
Yeah,
you know,
I mean,
it's go ahead.
So Trey Matthews he's a New Jersey Devils fan. He kind of got lumped into New Jersey Devils fandom because he was given this podcast. He's a very talented kid. He's a play-by-play man at I think it's called Adrian College. He does a lot with the hockey team there, but his story is very interesting. I've been talking to him for a couple months, just kind of like I was like, hey, kid, like get your chops up, get your podcast voice going, and then we'll have you on our podcast to kind of be the guest to sit in the other chair and kind of see what that's like. And I've been following him, and what had me bring him on, to be honest, is he had this big profile with his name's escaping me. I could find it, but he had a big profile with the play-by-play guy who's going to take over the Seattle Kraken. The guy, he jumped from the ECHL all the way to the NHL. And he just, he reached out to the guy and he just kind of, can I say balls? Can I say he had the balls to do it? I mean, it's live, so I guess I can't do anything about it now, but he had the balls to reach out to the guy.
No. How you covered up Nick on a family-friendly show? Did he have the Kevin balls to do it?
Yeah.
Right.
He had the Kevin balls. He had that 6'7" energy to reach out to this guy and just be like, "Hey, big fan, love to talk to you." And the guy reached back out to him, and sometimes it's one of those stories where it shows that like sometimes you just need to ask, and we take that philosophy all the time. We ask very big people in the hockey world,
Oh
and
yeah.
sometimes they just say no, and that's fine, Sam. It's fine when they say no, but sometimes, as Trey learned, they say yes, and they work with you, and you build that relationship. And I didn't have a relationship with Bryce Salvador before we had him on the podcast. We had him on once, and Sam, he has to be on every month. I didn't have a relationship with Chris Westcott, but now he's coming on next week to preview what the Devils are doing with the draft. And that all started with just kind of reaching out and just asking him, be like, hey, what do you think of this? This is what we're doing. Would love to work with you and see what you guys are doing, collaborate a little bit. Ken Danico, Stan Fischler, all the big guests that we had. I don't know about you. I know you guys had, somewhat of a relationship with Doc, but again, you still had to kind of go out on a limb and ask those questions, not knowing what his reaction is going to be. And it's almost always worth it to just kind of give it an ask and say, let's see what happens with this. Let's try it out. And, when I saw his moxie when he did that, I was like, I got to get this guy on now. This guy is ready. I think he's going to be a great guest. I think he's going to have a lot to say. He's a personality from everything I've seen on Twitter and his podcasts. So I'm excited to talk to him.
Well, I got to tell you. So number one, for the listeners that do have podcasts, they would understand. The ones that don't, majority of you don't have podcasts. Sometimes it's nerve-wracking trying to ask a big-time guest to come on. Like, when I asked Doc Emmerich, I was so nervous typing, just typing an email. Will he respond to me? Or will it go to the wayside for 3 months before he responds back, or if he responds back at all? Or when we asked Erica Wachter that one time, and, you're just like nervous. Oh, what? She's going to think like we're a bunch of idiots, but we really are. So hopefully I can cover it up. It can be nerve-wracking, but over time, you realize they're human. They're human. Yeah. You treat them with respect. Everybody's situations, everyone's agendas are different. But the bottom line is, if it was meant to be, it's meant to be. So, that's and I give Trey a lot of credit for what he's done to ask, and reach out, because it does take a lot of Kevin balls to do that.
Yeah. And it's funny you say that, because the one that really, really sticks out when we talk about that is Greg Wyshynski. Because I told you, how many times did I tell you, oh, I think we're going to get Greg Wyshynski, and then I had to tell you, I don't think he's coming on. And then it's like, oh, maybe, there's some hope. That's just because the process of getting some of these people, like going through some of the ESPN personalities, you have to go through their media person, and their media person has to ask them personally. Even if, like, for example, like with Chris, Chris has to go through his Devils media person, even though we've already established a relationship, just how these things work. So I asked Greg, he said yes. He's like, yeah, just, we'll work out the dates. So I went to the ESPN guys, didn't hear back. And then I honestly just kind of said what's the right word for it? I don't want to say it was a nasty comment on Twitter, but it was definitely, there was shade. There was shade involved. And he was like, what are you talking about? I was like, oh, my bad. And then we just continued to going, but I just kind of like said something stupid on Twitter, and that led to Greg Wyshynski being on our podcast. And, he's probably one of our favorite podcasts that we ever did. It's one of the ones that I use for the reel and use to show other guests, be like, this is what we can do with a big name guest. And he was great. And it all had to do with just, never giving up on it and just keeping it going. But Sam, we're babbling on about ourselves. And if we're going to talk about ourselves, I don't know if anybody's here for that, but if we're going to talk about ourselves, we should probably talk about the fact that I've been the handyman in the house this week. And I feel like, as much of a man as I can being a hockey podcaster, because I fixed the toilet, I fixed our TV, I've been fixing things around the house. You just bought a house. I'm sure there's a laundry list of things to do that you have to fix. So, I feel like a hockey player a little bit because I'm fixing everything and I feel manly. So we should probably talk about hockey.
Well, it's really funny. Before we start talking about hockey, I was telling my wife, I'm like, I got 3 full-time jobs. I got this, I got the podcast, and I'm doing this house. And then she says, well, I got my full-time job, I'm doing this house, and I have to take care of you. You're a baby, I was like, oh yeah, that's right. Anyway, so yeah, all right, so let's get some Devils talk. Right now, the Stanley Cup Finals are going on. It seems to be coming to a pretty competitive Stanley Cup Finals. I like the artificial noise. I feel like it's going on. The visuals look fantastic. I think the high quality play is very good. I think both teams want it. And it's going to be very unique in nature. And one thing I will say, though, Nick, what I like is at least Dallas and Tampa in their franchise history have won it. I would feel bad if this is how the St. Louis Blues win the Stanley Cup when the fans couldn't even enjoy it. At least for the first time, it would have been a very unique scenario. And of course, you've got all those, jealous idiots that are going to be like, oh, there should be an asterisk next to it. And, if a tree falls in the forest and no one's there to hear it, did it really fall? That kind of thing,
That's stupid.
So,
people are stupid.
Yeah, I know. But,
this is absolutely legitimate. This might be the most legitimate title just because of how insane this was. And you got to think about the impact on the mental health of these guys just being isolated from the world, not being able to go home to their wife and kids, and just kind of the impact of that's going to have on them on top of playing every other day. They have a back-to-back in the Stanley Cup Finals, Sam. And I get it. And the only reason why I get it is because you can't put Game 6 of the Stanley Cup Final up against football. You can't. You can't do it. College football is one thing, but to put it up against the NFL, it's a possible clinching game. So I get it. It stinks. Maybe you could have did Friday and then Monday because then you only have the Monday night game and you had a chance against that one. But I get that you don't want to put Game 6, one of your marquee games, up against football. But still, a back-to-back, Sam. That's rough in a Stanley Cup final. And then on top of it, they're just what they've been doing on the ice, just grinding. And the grind of the Stanley Cup playoffs is already a lot, but playing every other day, dealing with the injuries. Braden Point is barely, is limping out there, but he's playing well. Stamkos returned tonight for the first time since February and scored in the first period. So that's probably just straight adrenaline. But all these things it's been and this is one thing I talked about with the future guest he's going to be a lot of fun, but that's just a little teaser. But I've been talking with him and we both said, I can't believe they pulled it off. And what I mean by that is we've gone 6 weeks without a positive test. We've gone, we've never had a game in jeopardy. We've never had a game in doubt even. We didn't even have to worry about it. You see what's happened with college football where, Notre Dame just had to cancel their game. One of the biggest names in college football is canceling games. Multiple Big 12 teams have had to cancel games. A lot of these mid-majors have had to cancel games. You hear positive tests all across the ACC. And that's not even getting to Major League Baseball. Major League Baseball is still seeing tests every so often. So the fact that hockey did this better than every other sport, and NBA did a good job, but you still had stories of people going to strip clubs and leaving the bubble and inviting people to the room who weren't supposed to be there. You didn't get that really in hockey. And speaking of Greg Wyshynski, he just did a story. It's getting a lot of praise. I'm going to read it tomorrow, so I guess it's a bad thing to bring up, but he talked to 9 people inside the Bible and kind of did a big chronicle what's inside the Bible, and I'm very excited to read it. I've seen just universal praise for that. So you haven't read it yet, have you, Sam? I know you're a very busy man.
No,
but it's definitely something you should check out. I'm very excited because it's him and Emily Kaplan, and every time they get together, they're very good together. But this is they've just covering the ins and outs of the bubble. Those two have been really, really impressive. So I'm excited to read that and just kind of seeing like the lifestyle that is. I mean, it's basically like, you know what it reminds me of, Sam? Do you remember that movie Biodome with Pauly Shore?
No.
Okay.
So I never watched movies as a kid.
My wife was watching it a couple months ago, and it just reminded me of like they locked him and Stephen Baldwin into a dome and to like save the planet or something. So they had to be away from the outside world for I don't remember what it was. I guess it was like 6 months. But it was just funny because like they had the best things to eat. They had like, you know, a million things to do. It was basically like living inside a park, but eventually like those things just get monotonous and boring, and I feel like that's the same thing that's going on with the NHL players. But again, we have Devils things to talk about, Sam, before we get Trey on. Dave Pagnotta of the Fourth Period, he's reporting that the Devils and Kyle Palmieri are discussing a contract extension, and that got me curious, Sam. I'm trying to figure out what price is the highest I would go on Kyle Palmieri. And I'm trying to think of like, I wouldn't be upset with 6. I think 6 is a very fair deal for both sides. If you want to give him a nice little raise for that and give him like a 5-year deal, I'd even go 6 because the skills that Kyle Palmieri has does not. For some people, it goes down a little bit, but he's always going to be able to boom that shot no matter how old he is. So if you want to go 6 years, if that's the breaking point and he's willing to do it for $6 million, I'd say let's give it to him. But I would be ideal as 5 years, $30 million total. But what's the highest you'd go, Sam? What's the highest you'd go for Kyle Palmieri? What do you think he's worth?
He's got a lot of intangibles. How old is he right now?
I think he's is he 29 or is he? I'm looking up. He's 29.
29
Turns
years
30
old.
in February.
It all depends if he's going to ask for a no trade clause, right? You know, if you're going to ask for a no trade clause, you know, that's a bargaining chip right there. Me personally, I value Kyle, but at the right price. In today's market, you know what? He's a leader of the team. I would put him no more than 7.2 a year for 5.
Oof, that's expensive, but I get it. But that is expensive. I'm just trying to figure out. So here's what I don't understand.
Just remember. I said no more than 7.2. I didn't say go to 7.2.
Yeah, I understand.
More in the 6s, but I was trying to be nice.
Yeah. So there's all these reports about an internal cap in New Jersey, and I don't understand those. I haven't heard those, and the people I've asked about it have not said they heard about it either. But a couple people have reported "quote unquote" internal caps, and for New Jersey, but then you have the assistant VP coming out and saying that they want to add 2. What was it? Two wingers, a defenseman, and something else, or 1 top 6, 2 middle 6 guys, basically. Like they want to add like it was 4 players, and it's like, and I don't know. I didn't hear the specific context of it. I don't know if it was like, you know, including our prospects, we want to add 6 new or 4 new players to the team. But if you're saying you want to add 4 people through trade and free agency, that's going to be expensive. You know, not a lot of people are going to cost whatever it is, $1 million, $2 million. Like most of these people in free agency are overpayments, even this year. And this year has been weird because I thought there was going to be a lot more craziness with people trying to get under the cap. But Jim Rutherford's out here being an 80-year-old man playing fantasy team with the Penguins. So he's kind of ruining the trade market. We'll see if that Patrick Hornquist Matheson trade goes through. That's a terrible trade for the Penguins again. Imagine having to put Matheson and Jack Johnson on that third pairing, and then paying them. I think it would be up to like $8 million for a third pair, a bad third pair at that. Oof. But I think once that settles down, and once the teams who are a little bit more desperate stop making moves, I think the Devils are going to have a real chance to kind of take advantage of some teams. Maybe look at that Louis Eriksson contract in Vancouver. The guy in Boston I was thinking about too, but it sounds like he's staying put. The guy who used to be on the Blues, he's escaping me, but he's signed for another year. But it sounds like they're going to keep him and just kind of let him play. But there's a lot of contracts, even like a James Van Riemsdyk contract. I think that if you can get an asset in return, I don't think the Philadelphia Flyers are going to give us an asset, but I think that the Devils should be shopping for bad contracts this year. It'll give them another asset to expose to the Seattle Kraken next year. There's just a lot of layers to this. So I think that if you're looking at Vancouver, who's trying to re-sign Markstrom and also improve the roster on top of that, you go to them and you say, hey, we talked about Jet Wu already, Sam. Maybe you give us Jet Wu and we'll take on this Louis Eriksson contract for 2 years. And then maybe we'll give them like another asset in return of some kind. But
I'll tell you what, if the Devils get Jet Wu, it will help with promoting our jet, the private jet, for $35 million. If you donate or buy our T-shirts, that would be awesome if we got Jet Wu. And as we're trying to promote our private jet, where we take our fans on the road to see our Devils beat them in their own building.
So can we name the Jet Wu?
Hey, you know what? That's what we would call it, Jet Wu. If the Devils got Jet Wu, Devils marketing people, I know you guys listen to this podcast. Think about it. Call Fitzy up and say, hey, you know what? He's a great player. You can get him at the right price, and he's got a lot of marketing potential. So go get him, Fitzy. That would be great if they did. I'm all about Jet Wu.
I always wonder what those conversations are. Like, I know that first and foremost, the conversation is how will this player help us on the ice? But, like, for PK Subban, did they have the conversation that, like, he could be our star, he can kind of take some of the media away from Jack Hughes and Nico Hischier and Taylor Hall at the time, and he could kind of be like the guy you put in the front of the camera? Like, I'm sure those conversations happen, right?
Yeah. I think, there are times where I think, like, the Devils spent more time on their marketing than what was the product on the ice. And I know that's kind of unfair to say just based on results because, the players play hard. They go to practice. I think John Hines, and Nazardine, they really tried. I don't think it was a lack of effort. But it takes time to build that chemistry and build a team. It's not that easy. And Ray Shero found out the hard way. He knows. He got jettisoned out. So now it's Fitzy's team. I just think, right now, and we'll ask our next guest shortly, what his thoughts are, with the team, with the COVID thing, the extended break, 9.5 months. I mean, Gary Bettman's kind of slipped out a little bit. I'm not so sure when we're going to start. We're thinking January. He didn't say that out loud, but
Yeah.
But so, you know what, Nick? Speaking of the title New Jersey Devils podcast, we're nearing October, and this is normally around the time, training camp and, getting ready for the season. We're all screaming, yes, Jack Hughes came back as a beast and all that. It's a little different right now. I feel like time stopped for about 3 or 4 months. Just stopped.
It did.
It did. It
I
really
think we
did.
just skipped it. I don't know. I have
Yeah.
no recollection of anything that happened between April and August. And the funny thing, and here's the thing, Sam, is I've looked back. I looked back a couple weeks ago, actually, I think it was last week, just at some of the guests we had during the quarantine. And I was like, oh, yeah, that was a pretty good podcast. And I was like, oh, yeah, that was another good podcast. And, we were, to be fair, we've been hitting on some pretty high cylinders for the past couple months. We've had very minimum no guest days, and at least one of them was a choice by us to kind of just tear it down and kind of, going without a guest because I thought that was best for the flow of the show. If you take out, we had those technical difficulties when we first got the house in June, but outside of that 1 week where we had the issues, everything else has been just smooth sailing. So I got to give you a round of applause, Sam, because getting us through this quarantine with high quality New Jersey Devils coverage when the Devils haven't played. So it's one thing to have an off season, because even if the Devils don't play, you have draft and free agency and part-time tryouts and the prospects games, and you get to speculate about lineups, and you get to speculate about where to put who, when, and who's going to get the call up, and where they fit on the roster, and what the coach is going to do with this person. But you can't do much of that this year because we have no idea who's going to be on this team, Sam.
Just remember, the title is New Jersey Devils Podcast. We are the most commented Devils podcast in the history of New Jersey Devils Podcast, and Sam Wu does not take a shift off. I think I've produced every single podcast pretty much. And we could have just mailed. You know what, Nick? We could have just mailed it in. It takes commitment to do this kind of stuff. We're just Devils fans. Trey Matthews, the guests are coming up. He could have mailed it in. He could have said, oh, wow, and not reach out to the Seattle Kraken announcer. He could have just mailed it in. No, you know what? It doesn't hurt to ask. And be smart about it, So, I love doing this podcast. We do it because we love the team, we love the fans. We got regulars. We got, right now I'm seeing Brett Hammerschmidt chiming in, Bill Lynch, Greg Lewis. You've got Omar Ba, is that pronounced it? Eddie's in. Benji is in. Michael Hay, Matt Junio in the Facebook Live. Jersey Joe, he's got his own podcast. We've had him on before. We're just like one big podcast family. So, it's always good to have. Matt Laughlin's got a podcast, right? He's got a podcast. He does stuff with Amanda Stein. A lot of people have podcasts, but this podcast that we do it live every Sundays and Wednesdays. And we go live if there's breaking news or get fan reaction. And it seems like I think Twitter has some people in there today. YouTube Live.
Twitter people. We got people
Twitch.
Everywhere, Sam.
Yeah. We got people in New Zealand. That's the one thing about this podcast I never realized. We're global. And I'm not saying this just to brag. I'm just saying we get that guy Campbell Dick from the New Zealand chiming in, wanted to meet up with Scotty in L.A.
Really?
To watch some games. Yeah, these are true. For whatever reason, we're on some kind of podcast network in India. 1.8% of our listeners come from India listening to our podcast. So I think that's great.
It's just funny how, and I just see, some of the groups on Facebook and some of the just people who are commenting on Twitter, just where they come from. And I'll get that Twitter comment at like 3:30 in the morning, and I work overnight, so I'm basically awake most of the day. and I look at it and I'm like, I want to be like, are you okay? And then I look at it and you go to their profile and they're from Australia, they're from Japan, they're from these crazy countries. You're like, oh, it's like the Devils have fans, and I think hockey in general has fans across the world, and that's kind of an underrated fact about the NHL. And I guess all sports, I guess, can claim that, but I do think that the NHL fans in other countries are pretty vocal about where they're from, and I think that's kind of exciting. I know that baseball fans have fans all over the place, but I don't hear how vocal they are, and you'd be hard pressed to find somebody watching cricket in the U.S. It's just kind of funny how these things work out. But anyway.
Also, I want to also point out, it'd be great if we had Devils podcasts in different languages. Remember we had that guy Sam on, where was he from? Slovenia? Or I forgot where.
I think so, yeah. Because he's in Slovenia, and he goes to see, he watches hockey in the Czech Republic, which is right there. And
yeah. Like, can you imagine if we had like different languages? Like, we've had Stan Fischler on, come from Israel. Like, could you imagine if there was like a Devils podcast network in different languages? Like, there's one in Chinese or one in Italian and all that, talking Devils around the world. That would be amazing.
I would like to point out, Sam, you made a good point. We've had guests on from 4 different countries so far.
Really?
Well, yeah, 4? U.S.,
Israel,
Canada, Israel, and Slovenia.
Slovenia. No,
that's 4.
That's 4. I thought we had another country somewhere.
Didn't somebody call us on vacation? But I don't remember.
Yeah. Wow. I didn't even think. See, we are international.
Our international friends across the globe. But yeah, no, it's a lot of fun. But before we get Trey on, what I want to talk to Trey about today is almost exclusively free agency, because we've been talking about the draft for so long, Sam. We've had a lot of draft experts on, and they've been great. Last week's podcast was amazing. I can't believe, J.D. Burke and Reese Jessup were just so knowledgeable and gave us such insight on a lot of those prospects. And that's exciting. The draft is very exciting for the Devils. But I am so intrigued to see what happens with free agency, because it's Tom Fitzgerald's first time in charge. And everybody's like, well, the Devils don't do free agency. I was like, we have to throw it out the window. I understand that Fitzy is he's a Shero guy. He's been working with Shero for a long time, but that doesn't mean he has the same exact philosophies as him when it comes to free agency. Maybe he'll go after the stars. Maybe he'll pay big money for Mike Hoffman. Maybe he'll pay big money for Evgeny Dadonov. Maybe he'll, maybe Sam. Maybe he'll go $9.5 million for Alex Pietrangelo. Maybe.
Well,
maybe
if he goes $9.5 million for him, that's $7.2 million for up to $7.2 million for Kyle Palmieri. That you can forget that. You gotta cut somewhere, right? Sorry, Kyle. Didn't mean it that way. By the way, I got to tell you, I didn't tell you beforehand. Those 2 interviews we did with Reese and who was the other guy? JD. About scouts. Thursday, Friday, Saturday, when I put up the podcast, we drop it at midnight. It's on not iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, some podcast network in India, Spotify, iHeart, wherever. I think we had about a good 1,100 downloads.
Wow.
Just for that. Yeah, it was crazy because people were. It seemed like we had some new listeners. I don't know how, but I was looking at the numbers. I was like, holy crap! Because I figured it was going to be double whammy because we got 2 great guests. But you know what? People are probably Googling what's next. And one of the things that I think it was Reese Jessup, the NHL scout, was saying about Nolan Foote. Maybe start rethinking about Nolan Foote a little bit. Not saying Nolan Foote is bad. I'm just saying that he needs to get better. But maybe we should temper our expectations. Maybe he's a third line center. So
I think I've learned in the past to always temper expectations of prospects, and then I fell into last year. I thought Ty Smith was going to come in and dominate the NHL, and he didn't even make the NHL last year. So, and I still think that was a mistake overall. But we were talking to him about Ty Smith, and he's like, we have to succumb to the fact that there's a possibility that Ty Smith doesn't start in the NHL again next year and has to go to the AHL to start. So,
Nick, I got to interrupt you. Sorry. Eric Massad wrote, only podcast out there that's live. Do you know what Eric does for a living? We got to have him on. He works for WWE. Ooh. And you know what he's doing this freelancing? He's the guy that's doing the NBC sports feed, and because there's no fans there, he is the guy that if a player's cursing, he takes it out. He's the dump button guy. He's the dump button guy. So we got to have him on because I was like, you probably have funny stories. He's like, oh yeah.
Well, we will definitely have him on. We got a couple months of downtime coming up that we're trying to set up. Yep. So we got a couple people lined up already, but we don't. Here's the thing. When we're looking at months in advance, we try not to lock down dates completely because things come up. But Eric, we'd love to have you on. One thing, it is funny, Sam, that you bring that up because every time I talk to guests, and this is almost every single time, it's like, well, when do we record? It's like, we don't record, we go live. They're like, oh. Yeah. It's like, yeah. It's like, well, I'm available from this time to this time. It's like, no, you don't understand. We are live at this time. It's like a TV show. We come on at the same time every week. It's like, what time Modern Family is on? That's the same time that the State of the Fan Address is on. Oh, Modern Family is not on anymore. Whatever. What's a popular TV show? I don't know. They all canceled. Big Bang Theory is over. I don't know. What's TV anymore? I don't know. The Good Place is over. All the good TV is gone, Sam. All the good TV is gone.
I know.
But this has been. You should have just called this the rant cast because we haven't really talked about anything. All we've done is been ranting about things. But why don't you go get our guest? I'm going to talk to Facebook Live.
Hey Nick, look what I can do on a live podcast. You said rantcast. I could just put it in the lower third, rantcast.
There you go.
Maybe we should retitle this whole podcast, Rantcast.
That's what we've been doing. Jalen's back. I guess we gotta talk about how much we hate the Rangers again. But
all right, I'll get our next guest, Trey. Okay. Trey Matthews coming up next. Nick, take it away.
Oh, I could see you typing in the lower third. That's the live. But Facebook Live, tell me who's somebody in free agency that you're specifically looking for the Devils to target? There's just so many different names. I feel like it's just an interesting year. Obviously Taylor Hall's out there. I've talked about Taylor Hall to death. I've kind of talked myself out of Taylor Hall. So I think I'm done with Taylor Hall. But would you break the bank for Pietrangelo? I know Rob Taub said that he wants the Devils to go after him. And he's tagged me on Twitter, and he's told me over and over and over again he wants the Devils to go after Alex Pietrangelo. And I think that's partially because he covers New York area hockey. And, it's funny. He's an Islanders fan. But when you cover hockey in this area and you're kind of like an all-around sports guy, you want the teams to be good at least. You need them to be Matt Junio said not Covey. That was a weird report. I didn't really believe it. I forgot who even said it. But somebody put a report out there that the Devils are considering bringing back Kovalchuk. He wouldn't come here. The Devils are nowhere near contention. I don't know why. I think he's 38. I don't know why he would come here. He's probably going back to Montreal. So that's out of the question. No Kovalchuk. We don't have to worry about that. Sign Alex. Marty will help. That's from Jerry. Marty will help convince him to come. You know what? Jerry, that's a really good point. Alex Pietrangelo probably has some kind of relationship with Martin Brodeur, and if he likes what Brodeur says, maybe that'll help convince him. But again, same thing with Kovalchuk. I think Pietrangelo wants to make the money, and he also wants to be on a team that's close to contention. And the Devils are. I think that if you add Pietrangelo, they become close to a playoff team. But it's still not a guarantee. You still need PK Subban to get out of his funk, and you need him to find chemistry for Pietrangelo. And if you're paying $18 million for that first pair defenseman, they have to. I mean, you got to get. You have to get more out of Subban next year, no matter what. But if you're spending another $9 million on another defenseman, then Subban has to just be a superstar again for you to be spending that kind of money. Matthew Doherty says Dillon, I think, could be a good get. Brendan Dillon from the Washington Capitals. He was on the San Jose Sharks to start the year. I think that's a really good idea. I think that his play style would fit with Subban a little bit better. I think he's going to cost around $3.5-4 million. Antonio Rodriguez wants to do the full court press on Alex Pietrangelo. You know, if we sign him, I'm not going to be mad, right? He's a star player. I'm scared about the end of that contract. I'm scared about what I've seen from like so many older defensemen. And then Omar says, I will guess on Galchenyuk, Granlund, and Nemestikov at less than $4 million for a year on Heischer's line. We got a lot of talk about free agency, Sam.
Oh, yeah. We have to talk a lot about free agency. And that's why we have our next guest. He's the host of Locked On Devils podcast. Please welcome to the State of the Fan address, Trey Matthews. Trey, you're on with Sam and Nick. How are you tonight?
I am doing great. Thanks for having me on.
Well, thank you,
and thanks,
Trey. Go ahead, Nick.
You know, we've done this so many times, Trey, and sometimes we still don't get the intro right with the guests, so I apologize for that. Me and Sam still love to talk over each other. But you know that. You know, you're the host of the Locked On Devils podcast, and, you know, it's a new podcast. And I've caught an episode or two here and there, and you got a nice personality for this business, and I really enjoy how you talk. But why don't you just give a quick introduction to yourself, to the New Jersey Devils fan base who might not know you yet, kind of how you got into this and how you locked on to the Devils, because, you know, I don't even think you're not even a Jersey guy, right?
Well, not technically, but I have family from New Jersey. My mom grew up in the New Jersey area, and I go to New Jersey a lot, specifically Trenton, because my grandmother's from there, my aunt's from there. They still reside there. So, no, I have some association with New Jersey. I remember going to Trenton Thunder games, and which is the team for the New York Yankees. Introduction about myself. Well, like you said, I'm the host of Locked On Devils podcast. That's a part of the Locked On Network. I'm the play-by-play announcer for the ACHA Women's D1 program at Adrian College. Oh, and by the way, the announcer I reached out, guys, his name is Everett Fitzhugh.
Yeah, I found it eventually. I was trying to fit it in, and then, you know, I felt bad. I thought, so my thing is, I remember there was something pinned to the top of your profile about, you know, your journey and things like that. I thought it was that article, but it was a different one. That's my fault as the podcast host. I had to do a little bit better. But can you just tell me about that interaction you had with him and just kind of how that went down and how exciting that was? I mean, I love this article in USA Today. And for all those Devils fans out there who want to kind of just learn about this journey and kind of learn about just fandom and excitement, you know, read search this out, search Trey Matthews in USA Today. It'll come up. I've read this article a couple times. It's really good. But Trey, why don't you just tell me about the experience of that before we get into hockey talk?
Oh man, where do I start? So I haven't been in the industry too long because I just started off doing play-by-play. I would say October of 2019, and I still felt like I had a story to share. But even though it crossed my mind during the season, I never thought of my play-by-play announcers in the U.S. or if not the country, if not that, the world. I never thought about that. I just, enjoyed doing what I was doing. And I found someone who is similar to me, and I just decided to reach out to him. I reached out to him at the right possible time because a few months later, he was named the official voice for the Seattle Kraken, which will hit the ice in one full calendar year. But just reaching out to him on Twitter, sharing my story. I want to take credit for that, but my father was the one who actually encouraged me to reach out to him and just see if I could get a response. And he was really quick to respond. He shared my story. It opened up so many opportunities. That's how the Lockdown Network found me. That's why they hired me to, do my show. And he's been a great mentor. He's taught me a lot, not just hockey-wise, but, business-wise, life-wise. You know what I'm saying? So just a great guy overall, great mentor. He meticulously went through my broadcast and just a great interaction we have. And I've been written about in the news, I'd say 3 or 4 times now, and it's amazing.
And you talk about the African American community and doing play-by-play. It kind of reminds me, I went to college at West Virginia University, and we did the play-by-play for the hockey team as well at the radio station. And I haven't talked to him in a little while, so I don't want to call him out. But we had a guy named Terrell on the play-by-play, and he didn't know much about hockey. But we had this rule that to do basketball you had to do hockey, and to do baseball you had to do basketball and hockey. So he wanted to do basketball, so he's like, "Let me just get in a hockey broadcast." And it was just funny that hockey is so fast and it's so quick that when you're doing play-by-play in color, it's almost like an out-of-body experience because you're not thinking. It's happening, you're saying it. And it's happening, you're saying it. And only those people who have that natural personality can do it well. It's almost obviously practice helps. And getting to know the names is probably the hardest part, was always the hardest part for me. So many new names each week. But, it takes a certain kind of person to be able to just lock on to play-by-play for hockey because it's so fast. And Terrell was so good at it just those few times that he talked about hockey, just because he had a personality that shined. And he knew what he was looking at. He knew sports. Hockey is just like a lot of sports, especially with basketball. The basketball and hockey comparisons are very similar because it's 5 people and, the matchups tend to kind of fall into place similarly. So it's just funny how, the play-by-play, it can be a natural thing. And you're right. There's not a ton of people in the African-American community doing it. But, I bet you some of these people who are doing basketball and struggling a little bit with the basketball, I bet you if you switch to hockey, you'd be just as good because there are a lot of similarities to the game. But, Trey, I do want to kind of get into your hockey knowledge. I want to let people know just, how knowledgeable you are about the Devils and the things that you've learned in the couple of months that you've done this podcast. And, we've had a bunch of people on talking about the draft, but I wanted you to come on and talk a little bit about free agency. And I want you to talk about, the Devils have a lot of holes in this lineup. The Devils as currently constructed, are a very bad team. But I want you to tell me what first of all, do you have a number one? Do you have a number one person on your list as far as free agency that you're really going after?
Listen, as bad as we are, we don't have the right to have a number one. We'll take what we can get at this point.
In your perfect world, who do you think is the best fit?
Okay, so you guys were talking about Mike Hoffman of the Florida Panthers, if I'm correct. So I actually had a guest star on my show. He said that Mike Hoffman would actually be a good pickup for the Devils because he's under the radar. So I feel like that would be a good pickup for the Devils. Now, here's where I'm going to have to disagree with most people. And this is how I get my listenership up and stuff like that. I'm going to have to go, we need defense, because if you look at the first 6 games of the Devils, it was mostly defensive issues. So look at that Sabres game. We lost 7-2. You can beat a team 2-1. You can beat a team 2-0. but you can't beat a team 7-2. That's not hockey. In fact, that's one of my least favorite things to call in hockey, which is a high scoring game. Because, like I said, I know I sound like a broken record when I say this, but that's not hockey. So, looking at some potential defensive you could go after Brendan Dillon because I feel like that would help the Devils a lot. Defensive man for the Washington Capitals. I feel like he would be really cheap, and I think he can help us out because let's face it, no one's going to want Subban, not with his contract. So I feel like go after Dillon. There's a lot of other people on the table like Eric Gustafsson. He's pretty similar to Will Butcher. So slightly larger and older. Obviously that might not be the best one, but at the same time, when you're the New Jersey Devils, you have to focus on who's cheap, who's available, who might fall under the radar. Because, like I said, we are not one or two pieces away from like a championship. We need to rebuild because we tried contending by getting PK Subban, and now we're stuck in neutral with Subban because we can't get rid of him, and he's playing mediocre. So it's like, what do we do? And also, I'm just waiting for the expansion draft for the Seattle Kraken, as you stated. I'm waiting for them to either take Zajac or Subban or both if they can. So that's what I'm looking forward to. But in terms of those players, I gave my opinion. So I go with Eric Gustafsson. I would go with Brendan Dillon and also Mike Hoffman because I feel like Mike Hoffman, he's 30, so he's starting to get up there just a little bit, but I feel like he would be pretty serviceable because we need to look at people who are either young or young enough. So because we're in rebuild, we're not one or two pieces away from a championship, but that's my full-fledged opinion.
So I'm curious. You brought up Hoffman. Hoffman's obviously would fill a winger position, and he's not going to come cheap. But he's not going to cost like $8 million or anything like that, I don't think. And I don't think the Devils would be in the market for him at $8. But he might cost $6, and I think the Devils might be in that. I think that would be a good signing for them. I agree with you. I think they need scoring. I think they just need finishers. They have Hughes and Nico, who have both shown that they can be playmakers. But you need finishers to be on the wings. So I think having a veteran like Hoffman on one line and then a veteran like Palmieri on the other line, I think that'll help. But Trey, I'm curious because I've talked to fans, and our fans are very split on this. So I'm curious of somebody who's been analyzing this team extensively as of late. I'm curious of what your thought is on Taylor Hall. Taylor Hall is an ex-Devil. He's somebody who knows the area. He's somebody who said explicitly that he likes the area. The Devils kind of did a reset. It was clear that Hall just kind of wanted to get the free agency this year, and that it didn't turn into a good play on the ice. It looked like he was trying to stay healthy, but we've seen what he did when he was at his best. So what are your thoughts on Taylor Hall?
Man, Taylor Hall. I mean, when we first traded for him back in, I believe it was 2016, everyone was saying we got to steal trade, because Taylor Hall is one of the best players in the game right now. And obviously it was sad to see him go, but, I read on reports that he and Subban kind of butt heads a little bit due to Hall believing that Subban wasn't taking the game of hockey as seriously. As we all know, PK has kind of become more of a social media kind of figure instead of like a predominant good hockey player like he was with the Montreal Canadiens and, stuff like that. So, I read reports on that. But when he was traded to Arizona, I don't expect him to return to Arizona at all because, with the drama that happened there, obviously, he played in 35 games, put up 10 goals, 17 assists, pretty solid numbers for him. And when I think of Taylor Hall, I feel like he was a great player for New Jersey when we had him. It's a shame that we couldn't do more with him. Just what else can I say? I was sad to see him go, and I liked him. Yes, his personality could be flamboyant, flamboyant at times. I admit that. But at the same time, you know, if you want to win, you need that guy on your team. In all honesty.
Okay. Another name I haven't heard a lot about, and he's a defenseman, and he's a former Devil, and we traded him this year, is Sami Vatanen. Sami Vatanen was awesome when he was actually playing for the Carolina Hurricanes this year. He was really good in the playoffs. He definitely added a lot, and I think the Hurricanes might try to re-sign him. But, you know, I remember in 2018, we were worried about this summer because we're like, we're gonna lose Sami Vatanen or Taylor Hall. We're gonna lose one of them because they're both gonna need $8 million, $10 million contracts, and obviously that's changed quite a bit. But Vatanen is a guy you might be able to get on a decent contract. Is that somebody you'd consider?
I'm a little torn on that because it's like, do you try to re-sign a player that kind of dealt away? I mean, I always find that I'm a little hesitant when people are like, we could bring a player back. Let me just be clear. I would definitely be open to him return, but I just don't picture it because, you know, when do you hear about a player who was traded and then becomes a free agent and then returns to that team like a year later? You know, it's a few years. But you know, he's 29, and he did put up pretty good numbers for the Devils. He was good for us. Could we bring him back? I think it's realistic, but at the same time, a little far-fetched. If that makes sense.
Oh no, definitely makes sense. I think the reason why we're not talking about Vatanen is because there's probably no smoke there. So maybe there's, you know, obviously if there's no smoke, there's usually no fire. But it's always been interesting because people pull a lot of things out of nowhere. But a report did come out from Dave Pagnotta from the fourth period that the Devils are looking at Kyle Palmieri extension, which would be nice to kind of get a guarantee in what he's going to make in the future if they're keeping him. Just to kind of jump off, and we'll go back to free agent and see in a second, but this just popped in my head. What are you thinking of? Because I can't figure out what I would pay Kyle Palmieri. And I've been thinking about this all day. And, you know, I asked Sam. Sam said he'd go $7.2 million for Palmieri. I thought that was a little rich for my blood. You'd be hard-pressed to get me off a 6. But what says you? What are you thinking would be the right price and the right length for a Kyle Palmieri extension?
So are we keeping him for because he signed a 5-year, $23 million contract with the Devils, including all that being guaranteed. And, you know, so are we talking about that around that time, like, you know, for 5 more years or 3 more years, or what were we talking about?
I mean, it's up to you. It's you know, so obviously he's signed through next year. So everything that we'd sign him for would be from age 30 beyond. You know, is it worth it to sign him until he's 35, 36? You know, I did point out that I think that his skill set is one that ages at least decently, but he does get hurt. So, you know, do you think that he's worth are you saying he's 3 years or nothing, or are you saying that, you know, you'd be willing to go 5 or 6? And what would the price be for those kinds of contracts?
So in my predictions for the expansion draft for the Seattle Kraken, I do have the New Jersey Devils protecting Palmieri because I feel like I would say let's re-sign him for maybe not $7 million, but I'd say let's keep him around for like 3 or 4 more years because I feel like that's the window for the Devils to rebuild because like we have Lindy Ruff for 3 years, obviously, but still, you know, got to work with what you got. So I feel as though they're going to take about, I think they take about 1 to 2 years to rebuild, to get rid of some bad contracts, maybe sign a few pieces, develop Hughes, split all of them. And Paul Mary, he's only 29. He's 29. Yes, he's getting up there. He's about to hit 30. But bear with me.
Mm-hmm.
I feel as though this hockey we're talking about, we have guys who are playing until their mid-40s. So I feel like he's got a lot of years left in him, even though you said he does get injured. I feel as though he's worth the risk to sign, I'd say, let's say 6 years, 3 to 4, $6 million annually, 3 to 4 years. I feel like it's worth it. Yes, because we need that, honestly.
If we got Paul Mary for 3 to 4 years at $6 million, I'd be through the roof happy. So, and I think that's a fair contract. I think that, if you want to, I think, and Sam brought up a good point. I think a lot of the negotiations probably has to do with no move, no trade clauses, things like that. But I think 6 is a price that I think both parties would be happy with. Paul Mary's making 4 and some change right now. I think it's like 4.85. That's a steal. But, it's bad. I think players are starting to get to the point where they understand that it's bad to pay for past performance. And, they'll accept a little bit less than what they want, but, a nice hefty raise. And it's a nice hefty raise to go from 4 and some change to 6. So I definitely think that that's a fair contract for all sides. And then there's one other name that I had to bring up. Oh, no. Yeah, go ahead.
Do you think there's any other teams eyeing Paul Mary? Like that also plays a factor. Which team would eye him? Like if it's a contending team and they offer him that same contract that I just offered, you best believe he's heading there. Do you think there's a team that might be wanting Paul Mary?
I think every team would want Paul Mary. The teams that I'm specifically thinking of is Boston would want Paul Mary, and Boston would give up. I think that they'd give up Vekanainen. I think I messed up that name completely. Euro, the defenseman prospect that they have. I think they'd give him up. They don't have a first-round pick, though. So I think that the Devils would be hard-pressed to make a deal with them. So I think if he made it to free agency, I think that Philly would go after him. Depending on what they figure out with the JVR contract, I think they're really trying to move that this offseason just to kind of reset. And if they're able to do that, I think they'd be in on him. I think he would do really well in there's a lot of places I think he would do really well in. And I could see him go to a place like, something you might not expect. Like I could see him go to Los Angeles and playing with the young kids because they hand him a $7.5 million deal because they just really want a goal scorer to go with these young kids to kind of show them how to play the game. And they saw what he's done for Nico. And, I could see a team like that coming out of the woodwork and giving him a Godfather offer and the Devils being like, we're not even touching that. But if you ask me, I think the deal gets done. I think that the Devils are going to get this deal done. I think that they like Paul Mary. He might be the captain. Like they might name him captain this year if he signs. I know a lot of people are just kind of pegging that to Nico, but they love Paul Mary and they love him in the room and the players love him. The coaches love him. I mean, the old coaches. I don't know how much Lindy Ruff loves him, but I think that they'd like that. So I do think that teams would be in on him. I think the Devils' asking price is going to be insane for him. I think he's still out there. And if a team matches their price, they're going to trade him. But the price is more than what they got for Blake Coleman. And what they got for Blake Coleman is 2 first-round picks. And I don't see teams giving up that kind of assets with such a strange year coming up next year. I just don't. So I think he's going to end up resigning just because of the trade market for him is not going to be that good. I mean, look at Pittsburgh already made their weird trade where they gave up too much for a player for Kasperi Kapanen. So there's not a lot of teams like him, like Pittsburgh. They have an 80-something-year-old GM. He only has so many cracks at this. So that I'm going on a rant. This is the rant cast, apparently. But that's my point, is that I think that Paul Mary's going to have suitors. So, Trey, the one name.
100.
Oh, no, you go ahead.
100% on board. Yeah, what I was saying was this is just a statement. I'm not sure about Nico Heischer being a captain, even an alternate captain, which he is right now, but I'm still not pressed about him being an alternate captain, honestly. I don't know. That's just me, though.
Okay. Hey, we all got opinions, and some of us have podcasts.
Yeah.
The one name I really want to talk to you about, though, you mentioned defense, Pietrangelo. Are you just breaking the bank for him? Are you just spending all the money for him? If he says, I'll go to the Devils if you pay me $9 million, are you willing to go that high?
Yes, and yes. Yes.
Okay.
Because I did. I forgot to mention it. How did I forget to mention this day when I was giving you my list of players to join? Come on, Devils, offer him, please. Okay, I know there's still a little. How would I say this? A nightmarish, let's just say, about the PK Subban contract. But if you can afford him, go after him. I beg of you. Please, if there's anybody from the New Jersey Devils front office listening to this podcast right now, I beg of you, I will pay for it myself. I will be in a lot of debt, and I will be homeless. I am willing to have him. I am willing to have him on the team, please. Because former champion, he puts up great numbers. He puts up really good scoring numbers for a defenseman too. Like this season, played in 70 games, putting up 16 goals, 36 assists for a total of 52 points. I think he would fit well in Lindy Ruff's style of play, because Lindy Ruff loves his two-way players. Now the thing is Lindy Ruff hasn't had too much success with it, as we could see what happened in Dallas. I forget the player's name, but he tried to develop a young guy into a two-way player. Didn't work out, and then once Lindy's gone, the player does well. So, his name slipped me, so I'm sorry for that. But I feel like in Lindy Ruff's system, if we had to have Lindy Ruff's old '90s system, I feel like Pietrangelo would do really well.
Okay. We're coming to the end of the interview, Trey. I just want to give you a couple minutes just to kind of give out, do you have any like message? You said you're one of the few, of your race who is really into this to the point where you're turning it into a career. You're building up a profile in the hockey community, and I just wanted to give you a second to kind of give a message if you wanted to.
Okay, sure. I'm going to give the same message I give a lot of people, which is, if you really want to do something, go for it. Because I took a risk doing hockey. I took a huge risk. I thought I was just going to do basketball and that was it. But I decided to, do hockey, do that, and like you guys said, it took what did you say, Kevin, to reach out to you? I was listening earlier. Take a risk, because the worst they can do is just say no. That's the worst they can do. They can either leave you on red or say no. If there's an opportunity presented to you, take it. And don't be afraid. Don't let anyone get in your way. Do what you want to do, but just always remember, it takes way more than just wanting it. Like running this podcast that we do, my podcast, your guys' podcast, you can't just wake up one morning and say, I want my own podcast. You got to be willing to line up your desk. You got to put in the work. You got to know how to edit. You need to do all those. It looks easy and it looks fun, but in reality, it's a lot of work. So if you want to succeed and be successful, it takes way more than just one.
Yeah, I totally agree. And just looking at your feed, you're doing this multiple times a day or a week, and putting out multiple podcasts a week. just continuing to get your opinion out there, continue getting your face in front of things, working with other podcasters, coming on this show. And it takes work. It takes sacrifice. It takes, and at the end of the day, we're podcasting about hockey. So it's basically replacing one hobby with something that we, get to build a professional profile with. But it's still, people love to do this. But again, running the feed and doing all these things, it's just it is work. And, when I see people like you hustling, and, I just remember it gives me a little extra drive to be like, okay, these young kids out here, they're ready to take my job. They're ready to replace me. And I'm not even that high up on the list. So I got to keep moving. And, that's a message to everybody. If you're low down, you could get up. And if you're high up, somebody could take you down. So I love that message, Trey. I really appreciate you having on. We're going to have you on again. We got a full off season to talk about. So, and eventually I'm going to have to come on the Locked On Devils podcast. Maybe I'll convince Sam to do it with me. We'll figure all that out. But why don't you just real quick, just give a plug to your podcast, let people know where they can find it.
Okay, I am a part of the Locked On Podcast Network. My show is called Locked On Devils. Find it on Spotify, Apple Music, Stitcher, wherever you get your podcast from. Hit me up on Twitter, TreyMatt4. I think my Twitter handle's down below, TREYMATT and number 4. Trey Emery Matthews on Instagram. And also my Snapchat is the same as my Twitter. Whether I add you back or not is totally up to me.
That's fair enough. That's fair enough. Well, thanks again, Trey. We'll talk to you soon, and good luck with the podcast.
All right, thank you. Thank you guys for having me.
Thank you, Trey. That is Trey Matthews of the Locked On Devils podcast. I was just checking out the comments. I screwed up the graphics. Nick, sorry about that. Thank you for warning me about that. A little text. See, we text behind the scenes on a live podcast. See, one of the greatest things about live podcasts is there are no edits. If we screw up, we screw up. Heck, the original title of this podcast was New Jersey Devils Podcast. And then it became Rantcast with an exclamation point. So now we are a rant cast.
Apparently.
Yeah.
But we went a little long with that. I was enjoying the conversation with Trey. He had a lot to say. He made a lot of good points. And I had to get his opinion on Pietrangelo. I had to see what he had to say, and I'm happy I did, because that was just good content, Sam. That's what we like to call in the business good content. That was good content.
Yeah.
But
Jalen
it's about game time.
Jalen Vels writes, you can still be a Ranger fan, Trey. So it's like, all right. I was like, all right. Always a Ranger fan. Trey, if you're still listening, there's always a Ranger fan trolling. He's our resident troll, Jalen. He loves the podcast, but he's a Rangers fan. They're around, and we enjoy it. We enjoy it.
It's called the hate listen.
Live. Yeah. Yeah. He loves us. He doesn't even know it, but one day, come over across the river, Jalen. Put on that Devils jersey. And a lot of comments.
Late at night, Jalen's 2 a.m. just sneaking into the closet in the room they don't talk about. And he just opens the door and he sees a PK Subban jersey. And he shuts the door and he puts the head down, just walks away.
Well, Matt Junio writes to Trey, Nico has the military on his side after, Trey didn't really want Nico to have the captaincy. I thought that was a little surprising, but you know what? He's entitled to his opinion, and this is why we talk hockey. I like guests that just express their minds and the reasons, but he liked Pietrangelo, and he was willing to take a mortgage out and put himself in debt to donate to the New Jersey Devils to get him. So
there you go. Are we doing GoFundMe's for the Devils now, or is it, or what do we? What's it? Is it Patreons or which one do we donate to now?
I don't know, but I'll tell you what, I'll go back and Devil's marketing team. I know you listen to this podcast. Get me JetWoo. That's going to be just great. But right now, I think I'm going to have to get our next. We got to play the game soon. We got to play the game.
Okay. Yeah, we got the game.
Yeah.
I got the game ready. It's an easy game this week, but it's also difficult because it's me.
Who won last week?
Did you win?
Barely.
I'm gonna have to go, Sam. I'm gonna have to go back and see what your actual record is. I'm gonna do that one day when I got a little downtime. I'm just gonna go back and see who won. What your record is against everybody.
All right, I'm getting Charlie Borges Jr. He'll be on shortly.
Antonio Rodriguez asks me, do I think we should go for Alex or not? Do I think we should go for Alex Pietrangelo? So here's how I would look at that contract. I think you're going to get 3 years of supreme defensemen. Top of the line, one of the best 5 defensemen in the game, kind of coverage, at least top 10. It all depends on if the players like Quinn Hughes and Miro Heiskanen and Cale Makar. I don't think Cale Makar. I personally, I know Cale Makar won the Calder over Quinn Hughes. I think Quinn Hughes is going to have a world's better career than Cale Makar. It's nothing against Makar. I think Makar's skill set is just, it ends up being a little one-dimensional. I think that Quinn Hughes could be one of the best defensemen in the game. So I think Pietrangelo is there right now. I think he's going to stay in that realm until he's 33. And then you're going to get a $5.5 to $6 million defenseman for $9 million for the rest of the time. But the good news there is that when that happens, you won't be paying PK Subban anymore. Yeah, I guess I'm in on it. Let's sign Alex Pietrangelo. Everybody's talking about how they want it. A lot of people are saying that it'll work for the Devils. It's a lot of money, and the cap's not going up, and it takes away a lot of the leverage that the Devils have. But if he comes in and he fixes Subban, and he lets Subban just play his game, and he takes the pressure off. And maybe he'll be the captain. What if the Devils sign him and make him captain? I don't think that's a terrible idea. He's already captain with the Blues. He's I don't know how it would work in the room. In the room, they'd have to talk to some of the veterans like Zajac and Palmieri and see how they feel about it. But and there's a storyline this offseason that hasn't come up. But Travis Zajac told management that he considered waiving his no-move clause this offseason. He said he wasn't going to do it at the trade deadline. He said he would consider doing it this offseason. And that's an interesting storyline we're not talking about. Maybe I'll write something. I have a blog where I talk about things. I should probably mention this. That's something to pay attention to. But I wouldn't be that surprised if they named Travis Zajac captain if he didn't get traded. Anyway, Sam, you threw me off when I saw you. Sorry about that.
1 sec. Sorry, I'm just discombobulated. I came back too early because I'm trying to look for the Charlie Borges graphic right before he comes on. I actually called the wrong number, and I'm talking to this guy.
Oh boy.
It's like, yeah, we got Nick's on live air right now, blah, blah, blah. Can you hear him? Blah, blah, blah. And just made an ass out of myself. Anyway, the guinea pig eater. Now, playing the game, Charlie Borges Jr. of Pucks and Pitchforks blog. You can find him at Charlie Borges Jr. on Twitter. Charlie, It is Charlie. Are you Charlie? Just want to make sure before I put you on air.
According to my birth certificate, I am the person you are suspecting I am.
Oh, and
you're never going to let me down the guinea pig, are you?
I mean, you send us the only picture we have of you, Charlie, is you eating guinea pig. So what do you expect? Every time we see you on the show, we see you eating guinea pig.
Do you want me to send another one? I'll send another one.
I mean, this is the life you choose. When we go through life, we make decisions. And one of the decisions you made was I'm going to go on a live podcast with thousands of listeners, and the way I'm going to represent myself is eating guinea pig.
Well, can I also just point out something to all the Pucks and Pitchforks contributors and some of the guests that we've had in the past? Today's guest earlier, Trey Matthews, look at his picture. That is professional. It looks good. He looks good. It's black and white, professionally done, looks respectable. And then you look at Charlie Borges Jr. holding up a guinea pig with a fork. Last week, we had a graphic for our guest. Can we get better pictures? That's why I like Trey. When you sent me that picture, Nick, I don't know if you found it on the internet or he sent it to you. That's a picture. That's a picture. I had so much respect for Trey that I didn't ask him if it was Taylor ham or pork roll.
Oh, well.
He would have been like, yeah. Anyway, Charlie,
I think Trenton's on that line. Trenton is on the line of pork roll and Taylor ham. I think they go either way. But all right, we're running out of time, so we got to get this game in. So this game is – I had a name for it. What's the name I should we'll call it the Let's Go Devils Top 5. I don't know. This is a terrible name. Anyway, I don't have a name for it. The no-name game. There you go. The no-name game. So basically, I'm going to give you a player. We're going to do this in 3 rounds. I'm going to give you one player. You have to tell me 1 year that player was in the top 5 in scoring for the New Jersey Devils. From there, you're each going to take a turn naming the other players in the top 5. And then each, whoever ends wins the round. Whoever gets the last question right or gets the last answer right wins the round. So I'm going to name a player. So the first player is going to be Travis Zajac. So you have to give me a year in which Travis Zajac was one of the top 5 scorers on the Devils. And then from there, you're going to each take turns naming the other 4. Make sense?
Yes, it does.
You good, Sam?
Yeah, you said it was a simple game. I find it complicated, but go ahead. Let's play it.
All right. So, Charlie, I told you, name a year that Travis Zajac was one of the top 5 scorers in the New Jersey Devils.
I'm going to go with the lockout shortened year, the 2012-13 year. So I believe that was the year he got the big extension.
That was the year he got the big extension. A lot of people said that was the reaction to Parise leaving. And he was indeed in the top 5 in scoring. So, Sam, can you name one of the other 4 players who was top 5 in scoring on the New Jersey Devils that season?
Ilya Kovalchuk?
Ilya Kovalchuk was number 2 on the list in scoring. Charlie, can you name one of the other 3?
I think Elias. I think that was his last year leading the league, or not leading the league, leading the team in scoring for his career, I think.
That is correct. I don't know if it was the last year, but I know that Patrick Elias was the leader with 36 points. All right, there's 2 more, Sam. Can you name one of the 2?
No, I can't. Jeez. Crap. I don't think Yager was on the team then, so I'm not going to say him.
You shouldn't say Yager. Yager came as soon as Kovalchuk left.
Yeah. But I'm just using that just to buy time, just kind of like in a spelling bee. Can you pronounce it, please? Can you use it in a sentence? You know, that kind of thing. Marek Zitlicki, was he even still on the team?
Marek Zitlicki is number 5. Wow. He had 19 points that season. Wow.
Wow. Take that, Charlie Borders Jr. That stall tactic worked.
Wow. All right, Charlie. There is one more player.
Okay. I'm stuck between two. Okay, the two I'm stuck between is Adam Henrique, because that's when he started to emerge, and the other one I'm thinking of is David Clarkson, because he put up few amount of goals in the last 2 seasons, and that's why he got the big deal going home to Toronto. Oh, man. I'm going to, you know what? I'm going to go with Adam Henrique.
Oof. Incorrect, Charlie. The answer is indeed David Clarkson. He had 24 points, 15 goals that season, the shortened year. All right, so point goes to Sam.
I totally got lucky on that one.
Sam, I'm going to give you give me Patrick Eliash.
2001.
Like the year that ended in 2001, like against the Colorado Avalanche?
Yes, that year. 2001. Okay. Hopefully I get it right.
Correct. Patrick Eliash led the team with 96 points. I knew that. All right, so Charlie, can you name one of the other top 5 scorers in the 2000-2001 New Jersey Devils?
I'm going to go with Alexander Mogilny. And the only reason I remember that is because there were 2 40-goal scorers that season, and I know Eliash was one of them, and I think Mogilny was the other.
Mogilny indeed was one of the other 40-goal scorers. 43 goals, 40 points for 83. What a year for Alexander Mogilny in black and red, man. All right, Sam, who else you got?
Peter Sikora?
Peter Sikora is number 3, 81 points. Wow, so phenomenal years out of a couple of Devils that year. 35 goals, 46 assists. That's got to be the best year of Sikora's career. All right, 2 more. Charlie, who you got?
The pressure's on.
So I'm going to finish the A line. I'm going to say Jason Arnott.
Jason Arnott does just make it. Just barely makes it with 55 points. All right, Sam. There's one more.
Now, if I get it right, do I win, or does it go into overtime?
Let's go. Let's send it to overtime. Let's make it interesting. But let's see if you win first.
Scott Gomez?
Scott Gomez is correct. Scott Gomez had 63 points. All right, so we're going to overtime, Charlie. You know, how about this? Name the next three. We'll have you both name the next three, and whoever's closest wins.
I'm gonna no. I'm thinking out loud. There has to be a defenseman, and I know Stevens wasn't there, and Niedermeyer, I think, was somewhat hurt that year, if I recall. I'm going to go with the third one. Is Brian Rafalski in the top 8?
Name three. The next three. Just name the next three. So you got Rafalski.
Oh, name this three.
Yeah, this is overtime. So name the next three.
I got to name the other two in the top.
Yeah, sure. Why
not? Bobby Holik and John Madden.
Okay, Sam, who are your three?
Sergei Nemchinov, Bobby Holik, Randy McKay.
You both got Bobby Holik right. But Charlie got Brian Rafalski right. So Charlie gets the point for the round. You both missed. Poor Sergei Breland's best years in New Jersey Devil, number 6 in the team with 23 goals, 29 assists for 52 points. Poor Sergei. All right, Charlie.
I hate this new overtime rule, by the way. I hate this overtime rule.
You shouldn't have brought it up because you would have just won, but you got too cocky, and then I changed the rules. All right, Charlie. This one is going to be geared towards Sam, so you have to bring your A game in. Your guy is John McClain. What year was John McClain in the top 5?
Top 5 in scoring. I go with their first cup year, 94-95.
Okay. 1994. All right, Sam. Who else was in the top 5 in the 1994-95 New Jersey Devils season?
Well, it's definitely not Bernie Nichols.
It's not what I asked. I didn't ask who it definitely wasn't. So.
I know, but it was a lockout year, and those lockout years can be tough. It can be tough. Holik was on the crash line. Neil Broughton was only there for a little bit. Stéphane Richer?
Yep, Stéphane Richer led the team with 39 points, 23 goals and 16 assists that year. All right, Charlie, pressure's on.
Scott Stevens.
Scott Stevens was 5th on the team. He only had 2 goals, but he had 20 assists in 48 games. So he makes it in the top 5. There's 2 left, Sam.
Claude Lemieux?
That is incorrect. Claude Lemieux was 8th on the team with 19 points. He did have 86 penalty minutes in 45 games, so good for him. But no, the top 5 goes Stéphane Richer, John McClain, Neil Broughton.
If I can name one of the other two,
He already won. Doesn't matter.
Whoa. Neil
Alright,
Broughton actually. Neil Broughton was that? I thought it was like Devil's statistics. Was it Devil's? I thought it was Devil's. That's what I said. He came.
Yeah, he had 20 points in 30 or 28 points in 30 games.
But I thought he was traded mid-season. No?
That is mid-season.
No, it's not because it's a lockout shortened season. Maybe it
They had
was
48 games.
Crap. Wow, he scored that much? I thought maybe he wouldn't have racked up that many points. I mean, were those
I just
statistics
confirmed that he played 30. He played 30 games with the Devils and 17 with the Stars. He was terrible for the Stars that year. Or no, he played 17 for the Stars. Then he came to the Devils. He came. Yeah, there you go. He played 17 for the Stars. He was terrible. Devils traded for him. He played the last 30 with the Devils. Had 28 points in the last 30 games. But then the number 4 on the list, Bill Guerin. 12 goals, 13 assists for 25 points. So, Charlie, you take it in controversial fashion. I'm sure Sam will call player safety for some reason because he feels like. But the point of the matter is that Charlie Borges, you are the champion again.
the back and forth between Sam and I is something that I hold near and dear to my heart, and I wish you luck the next time whenever we do this. We're always pretty even when we do this.
You know what? I already knew I was going to lose when I called the wrong number to get you on, and I thought I was talking to you, and the guy's like, no, I think you got the wrong number. And I was like, oh, okay.
Way to go, Sam.
I blew it.
Proud of you, Sam.
Thank you.
All right, Charlie, you got anything coming up for us?
I have been doing a little bit of research for late round pick for the Devils. I have a few in mind that I think they should take. It's kind of hard to make a judge decision in a weird year such as this. But I think there are a few kids that the Devils should take in the later rounds, and I'll have a piece out soon about where they are projected to go and why the Devils should take them.
Perfect. We look forward to that the next week or so. Draft's coming up. We got a lot of draft content on Pucks and Pitchforks. But Charlie, thanks for coming on.
Not a problem, guys. Anytime. I'm always down to battle Sam. And I'll have a professional picture for you the next time I'm a guest.
Oh, thank goodness. Thank you,
Sam
Charlie.
is sick of the guinea pig.
Well, that's Charlie Borges Jr. beating the Woo in controversial fashion. You know what? If I didn't open up my big mouth, it's like I kind of blew it because I could have had a 2-0 lead, just sitting on a 2-0 lead, just whatever. But you know what? That's what happens on the Rantcast, episode 74. You call people, calling a guest, talking to some random person, and they tell you, oh, you called the wrong number. Anyway.
Here's the thing, Sam. You had the 3-0 lead. Mariano Rivera was walking out, and you blew it. It was in the bag.
That was like a 9-1 lead with 2 outs and 1 out to go, and Edwin Diaz just blows it. Unless the Nats make the playoffs.
You're not the best closer, so maybe we should call you Byung-Hung Kim.
Anyway, moving on. All right, so anything to plug this upcoming weekend?
We got a big podcast next week. Next week is one of our bigger podcasts. We got Corey Masek and Chris Westcott coming on. Back-to-back huge guests on the same podcast. We're going to be talking lots of drafts with Chris and what the Devils are doing with the draft and kind of their plan. I mean, obviously, with 3 draft picks, it's going to be huge for them. He's going to be talking about how they're going to cover it and just kind of how they plan on, making a big deal about these picks, because these picks are a big deal. And then, we'll talk to Corey a little bit about the draft, a lot of it about free agency, just kind of what's happening. And then, the next week is the draft. So, we'll have a lot of live coverage of that, a lot of big stuff coming for that. We're still locking down the plan, Sam, but, the Devils fans should expect us to be right there with them the whole time. Besides that, I'm going to look into that Travis Zajac thing. I'm going to see why we haven't been talking about the fact that he said he's going to consider leaving in the offseason and see what he might be worth. And we got a couple other pieces coming. I know Steve is working on something on Yaroslav Askarov, the Russian goalie who's been killing it in the KHL to start the season. So a lot of good stuff coming from Pucks and Pitchforks. And I think Vinny's working on something on Kyle Palmieri. I don't know. I have to follow his tweets to see what he's writing about next. He's tweeting about Kyle Palmieri today.
Vinny Parisi. You can't get a hold of that guy because he's that popular right now?
I mean, he's all happy as a you-know-what and you-know-what, thanks to the White Sox, being first in the American League East. So good for you, Vinny. Good for you. But I gotta say, I don't like how much he hates the Yankees. I will say that. But it is what it is. He's killing it this week, this month again. Another big month for him. Another big month for the website. But we're going to keep it coming with the draft and the free agency coverage. It's going to happen all very quickly. So get that preview coverage in while you can.
Yeah, and we want to thank all the viewers. Trey Matthews coming on. Charlie playing the game. We're going to drop the podcast at midnight. And we're going to have some great hockey content in the next couple weeks. Till next time, Devils fans, let's go Devils.